What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV. Another day in paradise, people. But it's actually got a little bit of positive scraps to bring you today for the first time in a while.
No one's out for the season, so I think it's good. At least that's got that going for us.
Yeah.
And as long as that's not happening and we're not losing, can't get much worse than that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, let's just crack into it. Let's just get straight into it with the Tottenham update. Starting off with Rodrigo Bentancur, as Sky Sports are reporting that Bentancur has returned to training for Tottenham as the squad prepare for their Premier League game against Brighton, which is very positive because he's one of the players that can sit in the middle of the park that can actually pass the ball.
I mean, in theory, you would have said maybe some of the other midfielders, like Gallagher at Chelsea, wasn't like as bad as we're seeing at passing the ball as we're seeing now. Gray was seen as quite a good passer, but I don't know whether it's because of the coaching of the team throughout this whole season or whatever it is. We saw in other regimes that we were better at passing the ball than we are now. But I agree, Bentancur is probably better at passing it than some of the midfielders that are currently playing. Yeah,
I feel like with Bentancur, he's probably one of the midfielders best suited to picking up the ball under pressure and being able to, receive it on the half turn and progressing it.
Yeah, I mean, there were times where we said that was a problem of his, to be honest. Like,
he's not the greatest at it, but I'm saying he's better than a João Palhinha, a Conor Gallagher, these kind of guys.
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely he can resist pressure probably better than some of those players. I think it's one of those where when we were talking when we had Ange, like, oh, that's probably something he needs to improve on, and we should be upgrading with him doing that. Obviously, when he
feel that way.
When he was at his best under Conte, he was phenomenal at it, especially for those that year, 6 months just before his injury. It seemed as though a lot of players can touch him. He was fantastic, and obviously since that injury, we've kind of seen it in fits and spurts, haven't we? We haven't seen it consistently. But maybe him coming back into the team, I do think De Zerbi's going to like him and probably put him in the team. Do I think it's going to be a major change to what we've seen in our midfield? Probably not. I think it's more of the same, to be honest, maybe to a slightly higher level. So it's good. More options, the better. But at the end of the day, it's not like he's bringing something to the team that is massively missing.
I would say that there is a caveat as well, because Bentancur does seem to be a slow burner when he's returning from training. Seems to take a while to get into the groove. But having said that, on his first game back from the ACL against Aston Villa, that was probably the best display we've seen from him in a long time. And then obviously he got injured that game. But I think apart from that, whenever he's come back from injury, I think he's taken a while to get into it.
Yeah, so I'd not expect him to start on the weekend. I'm glad to have him back, and it helps us, but it doesn't massively change anything. So yeah, I mean, if you told me Kudus was coming back, or someone or Odebear, or someone who really Maddison, someone who really offers something we were missing in the squad right now, I'll be like, okay, that really gives us a big boost. But Bentancur's a slight little boost, but nothing much changes, does it?
Yeah, look, we just got to take any boost that we can at this moment in time. You know what I mean? Let's talk about James Maddison then. You just mentioned him. He's also been pictured back in first team training, but as part of his rehabilitation in the squad. He's not expected to be part of the matchday squad anytime soon, though.
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't know. But if you were to hazard a guess, when do you reckon he's first going to be part of the matchday squad?
Probably May, at the earliest.
Yeah.
I was watching the Sky Sports report, and they said it's part of his slow reintegration into the squad. So as much as there are pictures at the moment, you see the training pictures today, he is with the team. So obviously you look at that, you get excited. You're like, okay, maybe he's getting close. If he's training with the team.
We saw that with Dragoshin for a long time though, didn't we?
He was there for about, about 2 months.
Yeah.
It seemed, with the team before he was ready. Obviously it's a different situation. We are in absolute desperate need. So maybe with Dragoshin, it was all we had Dancer, we had Van der Ven, Romero, even Palhinha was filling in at centre back. So, and we weren't in desperate need for him to come back, so we can kind of slowly integrate him. Right now we are. So whether we try and accelerate as much as possible, we'll have to see. But yeah, as they say, it's part of his slow integration. So don't expect to see him anytime soon. That's what they said. So as much as it is exciting to see him training with the team and going I saw him playing the Rondo, and he seemed to be one of the better players doing that. So that was great.
That's actually such a worry. I mean, I know the situation. Like, he's clearly, obviously, not going to be at his sharpest right now, and he's still looking like the best player that we got.
Yep. But let's hope he gets some minutes, and let's hope he can make some sort of impact. I'm not holding my breath.
On Vicario, though, Sky Sports are saying that no Vicario in training today, and it's likely that Kinski will continue in goal this weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. I was happy with Kinski on the weekend. I was saying even if Vicario was back, then potentially Kinski should keep his spot anyway. So, yeah, just take your time, you know, come back fully fit, and we'll see if we get back in the team.
You wouldn't have been saying that before the Sunderland game.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, look, I think Kinski's fine. We know he has problems, and we know he's probably going to be more needed in this Brighton game than the Sunderland one, because the Sunderland game, he wasn't actually that tested as much. He had a decent game. He only had to make one save, whereas Brighton, we know they're going to be more on the front foot. We're going to need his shot-stopping ability. So I'm a bit worried about that. But on the flip side, when Brighton, they're going to be confident, and they're going to try and press us, and they're going to try and force mistakes. And I do think Kinski, and I know it's ironic to say this after what happened in Madrid, but he might be better to deal with that than Vicario in terms of build up and playing out the back and stuff like that. So I don't mind too much. I'm also interested to see how Vicario is our post hernia, if he's going to get back to his best form, because clearly that did affect him, and if he is, he's probably worth having in the team. But unfortunately, not going to be ready yet. Not picturing trading. They're saying hopefully for the next game, but looks like Kinski will retain his place.
Yes, that would be Wolves away, potentially.
Yeah, it's true. Will Kinski be wearing a head guard? I'm guessing someone said.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Might be.
He had he was bandaged up, wasn't he? We have to see. I don't know. Have we seen him in training? Have we seen what he's wearing in training? I don't know.
Yeah, not sure.
All right, this is an interesting report from Talk Sport, talking of the fire sale that's going to happen at Spurs this summer. And they're saying that Romero is the biggest name on a player exodus list that the club has drawn up, according to TalkSport. Vicario, Udogie, Bissouma have all been tipped to be sold this summer as Spurs make way for fresh faces. Tottenham are expected to decline the opportunity to sign João Palhinha and Randall Kolo Muani. Other players are set to move on regardless of the drop, including Dragoshin, Pape Matar and Ben Davis, who will be out of contract in the summer. Wow. That's one hell of a list.
Sarr and Udogie are probably the biggest surprises, you would say, on that list. We know Romero, I think he wants to leave, and I also think some people within the club think maybe he's too much trouble than he's worth, more trouble than he's worth, so that makes sense. Bissouma, we know. Palhinha and Muani, we know, we've been known for a while, albeit, how many times, what were we saying after in October? Oh, it's no-brainer. Sign him up now. Do it immediately. And I said, just wait. You know, it's a long season. And now we're here saying it's not going to happen. We don't even want him anymore. And I think definitely getting a manager like De Zerbi in, I think, doesn't help his chances at all staying here permanently. But yeah, in terms of Udogie and Sarr, it is surprising. But we did say, didn't we? With Gallagher here, we have Bergvall, we have Gray, Bentancur even. So... And you have Sarr on top of that. They're all very similar profiles, and we can't just keep a midfield full of players that all do the same thing. We need some variation. So something's going to have to give, and all those players are decent players, but you're probably going to have to let go of someone that you quite like, because we just have too many of them, and no one wants to let go of Bergvall, Gray, that's for sure. Obviously Bentancur, it's probably divisive, but I think most people probably wouldn't mind letting him go. Sarr's just like a Gallagher, which we just signed. He hasn't been good at all, but we did just sign him. So I think Sarr is the odd man out there, looks like, at this point, which is a massive shame, because I really like Pape Matar, and I still think he's got room to grow, and I think he's probably going to go somewhere and be a good player. But it seems as though if we are going to sell someone, like Bentancur is kind of, a bit more experienced. You've got Gallagher, who's in his prime. Bergvall and Gray have the young side covered. So Sarr's kind of in between, where he's not quite at his peak, but he's also
still really young.
But he's not. He's young, but he's super young. He's not like a teenager, or even he's now 23. So, he's not quite in his peak, especially with his performance. But he's also not so young like Bergvall Gray, where they're developing at a really nice pace. So maybe it makes sense, but I don't like the thought of it. But would be a shame to me to sell him. But it looks like we're going to have to sell one of them, or maybe two of them. Might be Bentancur and Sarr. But no mention of Bentancur in that.
Bentancur, I think Bentancur. I mean, well, how long does Bentancur have left in his contract? Can't be that long.
Well, he did sign one, didn't he?
Did he sign one this season? Did he?
Was it this season or last season? It was recently. Was I think under Frank, wasn't it? Yeah, I think it was under Frank.
So how long does he have left? How long did he sign for? What, another 3 years? Surely not.
I think so. Runs out 20. Last contract extent. It doesn't say. I remember it didn't say a date, did it? It just said extension. It was in October 25, so October.
Right. Okay. That was it. Yeah, you're right. It didn't say a date. And we're just like, what the hell is this? We don't even know when his contract runs out.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, I don't really mind any player that's up for sale right now. I really don't. Apart from the young up and coming players that we can mould, or the new manager can mould, I really have no problem with any of these players being up for sale, because I think they're all upgradable, every single one of them. And if it's possible to upgrade them, then we go and upgrade them. And this is all assuming that we do stay up, because if we go down, the majority of them are going to leave anyway. So
are they upgradable in our current kind of?
I think they should be, because they've shown little next to nothing over the last 2 years. That's the reality. Like, these players are so low on confidence. I think they need a fresh start more, and we need to probably move on from them.
I think a lot of them, yes, but when it comes to like people like Sarr and Udogie, I think they're players who have.
Udogie, I like Udogie and I like Sarr, but the reality is we can't keep Udogie fit. We can't rely on him, and Pape Sarr is just so inconsistent. Like, we've never been able to get consistency out of him. So they're both majorly upgradable, both of them. I've got no problem with it whatsoever.
I think most people on the list, most players on that list, people would agree with. To be fair, obviously for me, I mean, I want to keep Romero, but it just looks like from either party there's not a willingness to make it work. So he's going to be off. That makes sense. But the thing is, Van de Ven's not on that list, but he's going to have 2 years left or 3 years left on his deal. He's going to want to push for it anyway. We know that. So there's going to be players not on the list who want to leave as well. You know, we've heard rumours of Xavi, potentially he's going to want to leave. Kudus, you know, he's only been here a year, but he might want to leave. So there's one thing us having a list, but there's another thing, the reality come the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, nobody's going to know anything until our future is sorted, where we're going to be playing next season, what division that we're going to be playing next season. So it's hard to talk about any sort of outgoings or incomings. I mean, there are some outgoings that's going to happen regardless whether we stay up or not. I think Romero's going to be one of them. Dragashin's going to be one of them. The loan players are going to be. But players like Destiny, Sarr, I don't know. Any of those players can stay if we go down?
Maybe. I don't know. I think someone's going to have to stay.
No, I'm talking about off this list. So, I don't know. Does Destiny stay if we go down?
No.
Does Sarr stay if we go down? The only one is Ben
not.
Davis, probably. I want to keep Ben Davis if we go down.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I think he'd be a good player in the Championship.
Mm.
But all the other players, I think they'll all go rather if we stay up or go down. So that's that. So I said to you there's no point talking about incomings or outgoings, but we're going to talk about some incomings anyway, because they're doing the rounds on the press. It does seem a bit pointless, but we're going to do it anyway. We're going to do it anyway. Senesi. Ben Jacobs saying that Chelsea are not expected to revisit a deal for Marcos Senesi as it stands, as report in Argentina suggests that Tottenham are at the front of the queue for the Bournemouth defender. Does he know that we're about to get relegated?
Yeah, maybe he hasn't looked at the league table. Maybe he seems they're fighting for Europe still. So wait, who's in front of the queue? Chelsea and...
No, Spurs.
Spurs.
Chelsea out the race.
Out the race. So just Tottenham?
Yeah.
Yeah, no chance. I don't believe that. Who's reporting that?
Ben Jacobs.
Yeah, no chance. I don't believe that for a second. Although, I mean, not that he'll come here, but in terms of other teams being interested in him, he probably knows he comes here and starts every week.
The reality.
If we are in the Premier League, whereas he goes to, I mean, does he start at United? Maybe. Well, it doesn't start at any of the bigger clubs. Maybe right now.
The reality is, if we go down, there's no chance.
Yeah, incoming in the Championship now. No chance.
It's a good point, actually. Do you reckon we could re-sign Kyle Walker if we go down? Take Kyle Walker for a year in the Championship.
Walker and Walker Peters.
Forget Walker Peters, just Walker.
And Walker Peters says.
To be fair, I wouldn't mind Walker Peters in the Championship.
Why not? He got Championship Player of what? Defender of the Year or something?
In Southampton, yeah. Yeah, he did. But, yeah, I mean, look, Senesi, I think it probably is a likely one to happen if we were to stay up. But if we go down, no chance.
I think he's got like Villa or Newcastle written all over it.
You reckon?
Brighton.
Well, Newcastle and Villa have decent defenders there already.
Yeah, but I reckon he'll play for one of them.
Who does he start at? Over which player does he start at for Villa or Newcastle?
Why? Who starts for Newcastle right now?
You've got Sven Botman.
Yeah, but he's a long-term injury.
Is he still?
Yeah, but he's been in and out of the team. He hasn't been able to overcome it so far. They got Shaw, Byrne. I think he gets in ahead of those players.
No, there's that other defender that they have that's quite good.
Teal.
Yeah, Malik Teal.
I think they can play him and Teal. Shaw's getting on a bit. Dan Byrne can play on the left. Villa, they've got Mings, Torres, Konsa. Yeah, they do have quite good ones. But again, he's on a free.
Yeah.
So if they're in Europe...
It is a classic Newcastle signing for free, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah, they brought in Lloyd Kelly and they just shifted him off straight away.
Liverpool, you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool go for him because they need a centre-back.
Nah.
Van Dijk's getting on a bit.
Liverpool go for Van de Ven.
Yeah, and they end up with Senesi.
I think Liverpool go for a higher profile player than Senesi.
I don't know. I think
to replace Van Dijk?
Not to replace him, but to become competition with him and knowing he can just step in. Because Van Dijk's still going to be there next year, I think.
I think he either leaves this summer or he goes into his last year next year. One of the two. So they got to really start looking for the Van Dijk replacement.
Agreed. So they can get Senesi in now. They have him and Van Dijk for the left-hand side. And then once Van Dijk goes, they go for another one.
We'll see. Van Hecker could be one that Liverpool look at. Van Hecker, though, we are going to talk about Van Hecker for some sort of reason. And reports in Holland say that Van Hecker dreams of playing for a top club in England despite Brighton's multiple contract renewal attempts. Several clubs have shown an interest in recent months, with Tottenham, Chelsea and Newcastle mentioned. It seems a matter of time before a concrete move from a top club is made. So I love it how they're saying he dreams of playing for a top club and then link Tottenham to him.
Yeah, I think he's probably I think there was probably opportunities to get him previously. I think right now, unless we stay up and De Zerbi can get in his ear and say, look, we ain't going to be the same Tottenham we were last year. Similar to what, I know it was different circumstances, but Ange with Maddison, you know, we were really poor the season before, finished 8th, obviously very different circumstances to now. But Ange had that conversation. Maddison said, look, whether you come or not, it's going to be a different Tottenham this year, and you know we're going to go on a different trajectory. Do you want to be part of it? And obviously convince Maddison to sign ahead of like Newcastle. Obviously Van Hecker would have knows De Zerbi, so whether he can convince him. But as you say, Van Hecker's been brilliant now for a few years, and I think he'll feel like he wants to test himself in the Champions League in Europe on a consistent basis. So it'll be a tough sell for Tottenham, I think.
Yeah, for him, like I mentioned before, I think he should really be looking at going to Liverpool. Or Liverpool should really be looking at going for Van Hecker. I think he'd be a brilliant addition to their defence there. Albeit they are saying Konate about to sign a contract there, aren't they?
Yeah, there's been talks about that for a while. But there's been nothing
I think there's been talks about him like kind of refusing for a while, but now apparently he's open to it. But look,
but they need extra ones. They've only got two.
We ain't a Liverpool fan channel here anyway. It doesn't really matter.
They've only got Konate and Van Dijk. They need probably two centre-backs.
True. But look, that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comment section below your thoughts regarding all the news stories that we have spoken about today. Next up, we are going to bring on a very special guest to the channel, former Tottenham Academy graduate, Tottenham player.
About Liverpool needing a centre-back.
Exactly. Let's bring on Steven Caulker. Steven, how you doing, mate?
Hi, guys. Good afternoon. You all right?
Yeah, you know what? No, I'm not all right with the way Spurs are going right now. Rooted into the relegation zone. I mean, can you make any sense out of it?
No, other than the fact that keep changing manager is not a good look. That's my gut instinct. I remember talking to you a couple of months back around the Thomas
Yes.
Frank saga, and I just felt that changing the manager. Of course, I know a lot of fans were calling for it. It felt like even the players were looking for that, but I don't know. I just feel when you change a manager, it's really hard to find rhythm and get some momentum going. So. Yeah, I feel and share your frustration right now. Things are not looking good.
Yeah, you look at the team right now when you watch them play. What? Because you look at the individuals, there's some good players there, players who play internationally for big nations, and there are players in other contexts who've been quite good, other managers, other teams. Yeah, as a collective at Tottenham, it's one of the worst teams. I mean, if you look at it statistically, it's not even far away from the Derby team back in 2008. That's how bad we have been. So when you watch them play, and as a former footballer yourself, what do you see on the pitch that is really holding us back? That's really costing us points at the moment and results. What's your analysis of it?
A couple of things. Confidence right now, I think is huge. I think like confidence, momentum is huge in football at every level. So I look at that and I think that's a big factor right now. Clearly, the players are struggling for confidence. The other thing I would say is leadership, because when you are struggling for confidence, that's when you need your leaders inside the dressing room. And as I was just touching on there, people are very quick nowadays to look at the coaches and look at managers and say this needs to be changed, that needs to be changed. But sometimes it actually needs to come from the players themselves. And I do, when I look at the team, I just think, are they pulling together? Are the senior players there pulling the players in and going, look, let's sit down and have a chat? Because ultimately, of course, they need to take some accountability, right? And they need to find a way themselves to find their form and so on. And I'm sure De Zerbi were doing his very best to help them. But those are the two things that I look at and think are both missing: confidence and leadership. And I just think De Zerbi coming in, he's obviously walked into a very difficult situation. I think he's a top coach. I really do. I've loved what he did at Brighton. Didn't see much of what he did at Marseille. But the biggest challenge I think he has is not tactically. I think the biggest challenge he has is giving the players the belief and confidence that they are good enough to compete. Because at the moment, I said they're really falling short in that area.
So how does a manager like De Zerbi, with only 7 games now, 6 games to go ahead about doing that? Because it's such a short space of time. You need to pick up wins now. There's no point. We can't build up confidence over 3-4 weeks and let the confidence kick in last game of the season. We need the confidence now. How does the coach go about doing that?
To be really honest, that's my biggest worry. And I've said it quite a few times online, is that is literally my worry. Is like, how does he do it in such a short space of time? Because from the outside looking in, if you look at De Zerbi's team, he builds it, over time. He's, when you look at his system and the way he's got a very unique identity, I think it takes like a while to build. And I'm thinking the same as you, he hasn't got the time to do it. So if I was him and if I was, I don't know, someone on the inside, I would be looking at it going, right, first and foremost, can I pull the senior players close? Can I have a conversation with them? That what do they need? What can I give them in order to help the team? I'm talking away from tactics first and foremost. Secondly, then when you are toward the tactics, I'd look at stripping it back and simplifying things, because I think that so when you are low on confidence, the simpler the tactics, the easier it is as a player to then go and deliver that. And it's a step-by-step process, right? So I'm not saying to play simple football for the rest of his time at Tottenham Hotspur. It's just it's a crisis situation. So those are the two things I'd start with. And then I guess he'd already be doing it himself, where he hasn't got the time to work on the pitch. A lot of the time he would be working in the analysis room right now. So a lot of the times he would be doing walkthroughs, because of course you'd have the sports scientists in his ear saying there's only a certain amount of time you could be on the pitch. So he's going to have to use those other tools. And yeah, listen, at Tottenham, you've got everything, right? You've got absolutely everything. The facilities are amazing. So he'll be using that to get the boys in and get them together. And I think being together is where it starts. Can they grind out a result against Brighton? And I mean grind it out, fans included. Can they grind it out, except where they're at right now? Grind out a result against Brighton and then look to build some momentum.
Obviously, you were at QPR back in, what was it, the 14-15 season when they got relegated. Harry Redknapp was the manager actually at the time. Like, I think at the time people used to say about that QPR team, I think it spent quite a bit of money, or maybe a lot of players on wages, big wages, older players as well, and you never quite kind of got like any sort of like team cohesion at the time, and maybe there were some players who like didn't care, or allegedly anyway. Like, I'm not going to make any assumptions, but when you think about your time at QPR and that season when they got relegated, do you see any similarities to the situation at Tottenham at the moment with that?
Well, we touched on the QPR situation firstly. We felt like we were a team of individuals, despite having, leaders or experienced players in the dressing room, such as, Rio Ferdinand, Richard Dunn, Sean Wright-Phillips, loads of experienced players in that dressing room. It felt that there was quite a big divide, Joe Barton in the mix as well. We never quite gelled, and I think that was a problem. And I want to say something actually. I don't feel like any player never cares. I just don't. I never agree with that. I just don't. I know it could look like it, especially since I've sort of stepped away from the playing side. I look sometimes and I think, I can get the fans' frustration more and more today than I ever could when I was younger and playing. But I feel like the players care, but then players react differently when they're under pressure. Some go into their shell. Others, just lose complete confidence. Others will turn up and fight. And I think when I do look at the similarities from QPR to where Tottenham is today, so I don't feel like they're a team of individuals. I still feel like they are, together. But I do look at a team that go, okay, a lot of those players there are like almost going into their shell. That's what I look at there, and that's why I say again, go back to the leadership. It's like I'm going on and on about it, but it's really the key bit that I think in the successful dressing rooms I've been in. I'm going to use an example of Southampton. Southampton had Jose Fonte there, who was a real leader. He was able to pull the players together, and they had a lot of success there. I think the players in the Tottenham dressing room are arguably better than what was in the Southampton dressing room. I don't know, actually, that was a special year at Southampton, but like on par, similar sort of level. But they had that togetherness, and I just think that Spurs are going to have to find that. Of course, I think the players care. Of course they do. I mean, they're affected by it if Tottenham go down. It's not just a case of they just walk off and go, all right, that's me done. Sorry, guys, I'm out of the club. It may look like from the outside, but actually, no player wants that on their CV. The wages get, cut in half or 40% reductions, etc. So there are consequences, is what I'm trying to say. And I think the players are well aware of that, and just personal pride. You don't get to become a professional football player without having that competitive side to you, that side of you that wants to win everything. So, I mean, they'll be hurting right now and be looking for a solution themselves, because, as I said, it would be a catastrophe for a club like Spurs to be relegated.
And just, as I said, you had Harry Redknapp that season. I think he actually left halfway through that season, if I remember. There's a lot of talk about Redknapp coming in now, to save the situation, to replace Frank and even Tudor, as someone who knows the club. Do you think that would have been a smart option, given where Redknapp is right now in his life and stuff? Do you think he could have come in and made the impact that we need?
Personally, no, I don't feel so. That's my gut instinct on that one. No, I mean, I worked with Harry at Spurs when I was a youngster, and I worked with him at QPR. I felt he was on his way out of the game at that point. No disrespect to Harry, of course, he's a legend of the game. He's achieved a lot, but that's my gut instinct on it, was that he was actually heading out of the game when I last worked with him, and I think that was going back over 10 years. And I just think he'd come back into it now, having been out of the Premier League for so long. I just don't see how that fits. You talk about him knowing the club. Well, the club's changed a lot since then. There's no players that were at Tottenham since then. There's not many staff members at the club.
Not even the same
then.
stadium, yeah.
Not even the same stadium. So I feel that, of course, there's that connection with the fans, and that would help, right? Because, as I say, when I say the fans, of course, can play their parts. I know they've been doing that, and I know that they came out in good force. I think it was before the Nottingham Forest game. I think it was, the Forest game, and obviously that game didn't go well, but the guys tried to do it again. And the reason why I think about that is because I just think of Everton, a couple of years ago when they had Frank Lampard and that at Goodison Park. That was just like crazy watching those games. So I'm hoping that the players give the fans something to cheer about, and the fans support the players both ways. It's gonna everyone's gonna have to chip in here, and De Zerbi, as I said, is an experienced manager. But he's got very, very little time to work his magic.
Yeah, you talk about leaders being able to pull us through this, or pull teams through in bad times. who are those leaders that are going to do that at Spurs? Because, you know, a lot of fans are saying, you know, we have a real lack of leadership at this moment in time. Romero, the captain, he's out for the rest of the season, but even his leadership has been called into question a lot this season. So when you're looking at the squad from the outside looking in, who are those leaders that can pull this team together?
There aren't many. That's what I see when I look at the squad. And someone who is like someone who leads by example would be a Ben Davies. I think he's someone that, you know, he knows the club really well, been there a long time. I played with him at Swansea, really good character. And, you know, so he's a leader. He's someone that can bring the players together. He's certainly part of the senior team. I believe Van der Ven can step up and be more of a leader than he's necessarily showing right now. I feel that he's definitely got that in him. You know, when I look at his style of play, when I look at his presence on the pitch, I think he could be more of a leader. Romero, despite being out injured, can certainly impact that. And I think also Vicario, you know, if you look at the team, I always feel like a keeper can be or should be an important part of the leadership team. I always feel like that's an area of which, you know, normally very dominant characters. So I feel like that would be sort of like the spine of the team, you know, that I would look at. And then I would also say Solanke or Richarlison up front. You know, Richarlison's certainly got character. You know, whenever you watch him, he's someone that wants to fight, right? And it's like, can you now challenge that and bring others in to fight with him? Because as I said, they're going to need everybody, not just to start in 11. They're going to need the players off the bench. They're going to need to really pull together and, you know, grind out results. I actually feel like an ugly win would be the best possible result right now. Just like an ugly win where, you know, backs against the wall, players have had to grind it out right until the 95th minute. You know, everyone's on the edge of their seat. But a result like that gives the players that belief. And it's like, that's what I feel the team sort of needs, that togetherness. And I'm hoping that it starts this weekend because, as you mentioned, you know, there isn't much time at all.
You also need just a little bit of luck to go your way. Like, we haven't had no luck all season. It feels like refereeing decisions are consistently going against us. You know, a ball flies in off Van der Ven's backside and smashes into the top. It's like when you're down at the bottom, it just feels like everything's going against you, doesn't it?
I swear to you, I thought the exact same thing when I saw the goal go in. It was the first thought in my mind. It's just like, when you're down there, I'm telling you, your luck. Like, we played the bottom of the league here over in Turkey on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember which day it was now. But they were actually battering us for the first 15, 20 minutes. I say battering us. They were on top, right? We weren't playing well. And we got one chance, goal. We got a second chance, goal. And I literally had the same feeling then where I just thought, you know what, when you're down the bottom, it's just like that. You get punished for half mistakes. And before you know it, you look at the end of the game, for example, we won 3-0, and that's a convincing victory. But actually, we know as coaching staff, we had a little bit of luck on our side. And I think Spurs certainly need that, because that goal on the weekend, yeah, it was frustrating. And it's like those little details add up and make a big difference over the course of the season.
And we got the news after that game, Romero is going to be out for the rest of the season. We've heard just before that Kudus is going to be out for the rest of the season. You know, someone like Romero, who I know a lot of people have their complaints about him, but he has been the captain for this season. I think a lot of the people in the dressing room like him and respect him. Like, for you, how much of a blow is it for Tottenham to be going to be missing him for the last 6 games? I think De Zerbi would have wanted him as part of the team as well, and losing his captain in his first game is probably not ideal.
No, he's a huge blow for the team, I feel, because he's someone actually at both ends of the pitch can impact the team. He's often chipped in with important goals. He's obviously a top defender and he's a World Cup winner. And I think he just adds a little bit of reassurance for the team. I don't think he's had his best season. I think that's fair to say. I think everyone would agree with that. But he is a big game player. He's played in big games. He's got experience. And at times like this, you want to call on your leaders. You want to call on players with experience to actually guide you through it. You know, it could be a nerve-wracking start to the game on the weekend, you know, and you need someone on there just to slow it down at times. Sometimes speed it up, but sometimes slow it down. Sometimes, you know, you see Romero sort of go down. He can spend a couple of minutes on the pitch. So, you know, sometimes that just buys the players a little bit of breathing space, kills the opposition momentum, and it's like those little tricks, those little things that it's often done by experienced players, and Romero was one of them. So he was still be an important part of Spurs for the next, remainder of the season. I'm sure of that, because the stuff that he'll be doing in the dressing room, the stuff that he'll be talking about in the meetings, he will be there and supporting the players through any minor issues that they have, because there's always issues that popping up. There's always, so you've got a room full of 25 players, 25 egos. There's always this popping up, that popping up, but it's like having Romero around there would just help balance that out.
Yeah, and we talked about leaders before, and you're talking about a player who's not playing who can make an impact. And I think there's another one in James Maddison. You see all the videos of him being a big presence behind the scenes, even when he's not playing. And in my opinion, I think he's probably the biggest leader that we got. So we need him in the year, and he's on the training pitch now as well. So maybe he'll be back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and he's another one who's obviously an experienced player, right? So he can certainly impact the team, and having him back is a big boost. Is he available? When's he going to be available?
He's not available. That Sky Sports said today that he won't be back anytime soon, but he's back training with the team.
Okay, well, that would just give him a boost, just him being out on the pitch, and also he'll feel more part of it, because so when you're injured, you definitely could feel left out and not part of it. I mean, it's different in Romero's shoes right now, because he won't be given the chance to be out of it. I'm very sure De Zerbi will be using him at every chance he can to be around the players. But having Maddison back on the actual pitch is a big boost. So maybe that's just, the sign of a little bit of luck changing for Spurs.
Yeah, let's hope so. And it's going to be interesting to see. Obviously, the first game under De Zerbi against Sunderland didn't go our way and wasn't a great performance, but we brought him in because he's known as this talented manager who plays attractive front-footed football. Some people say that's not what you need in a relegation battle. You need to, as you've been saying, fight. You need a passion, or you need to grind out results. So, how do you think De Zerbi's going to go about these last 6 games, implementing his style of play? Do you think he has to make compromises for you? Like, can he full out try and play his way of football in the situation that we're in, or should he make some compromises in the short term, and then maybe next season, if we do stay up, he can start implementing how he wants to play? Because most people in this situation say playing pretty football ain't going to get you out of it.
Well, I've been following this closely with great interest. One, obviously being a former Spurs player, but also just as a coach, because I've been really curious about how he approaches this myself. Because, as I said, he's got a real footballing identity, and that identity takes time to build. I'm almost certain of that. It can't be turned around in the space of, 10 days he had before his first game. So I've been following that, and in his interviews, he has spoken about, compromising. In other words, he has spoken about, he wants the players to play like Ange, he wants to build something here over time. So I think he's basically telling us that he's going to compromise, and I felt that he did that in the first game. It wasn't total De Zerbi ball. It still had his style. There's a viral clip I'm sure you guys have seen of where they built up from the back, and it was the Richarlison chance. Yeah. You could start to see his influence on the team, but he's definitely, in my opinion, making compromises, because the team right now, when you're low on confidence, I think the last thing I would want as a centre half is them being told, right, put your foot on the ball, wait till the very last second until they press you. I think when you're low on confidence, you're thinking, I want the ball at the other end of the pitch. I think the fans want the ball at the other end of the pitch. So, it's that kind of energy, I feel, at the moment in time would be quite a big ask. So it's just about finding that balance. But as I said, I'm very, very intrigued to see how he, puts the team out, and how he develops things. Obviously now playing at home. Sunderland's a really tough first away game, by the way. Like, they've had an incredible season.
Absolutely.
So I don't think anyone in the Premier League looks at that fixture and go, that's an easy one. That's that's a real tough one. Looking at Brighton at home, you'd go, that's a winnable game. Brighton are, of course, a good team, but Spurs at home against Brighton, I'm going, right, this is where I really want to see what he does, and then obviously following on from that, let's hope that the momentum builds and it go to Wolves and see from there.
As a player that's been in a dressing room before that has gone down, and you're talking about a lot of fans saying, if we do go down, a lot of players are going to be like, I want out. There's going to be a big fire sale at Spurs. But is that the actual reality in a dressing room like that? Are players speaking about it like that? Or do you think maybe more players will stay than maybe what fans actually believe?
Well, I think the club have a big say in it. So it's not just down to the players. Like, I mean, when I got relegated at Cardiff and I got relegated at QPR, I mean, especially the Cardiff one was like the wages that I were on at the time weren't suitable for the Championship. And the club were like, look, we can't afford to pay these wages. We don't want to pay these wages in the Championship, which was completely fair. The only club I could sort of remember QPR, I think that the couple of years before I was there, I remember were like paying insane wages in the Championship because nobody had a relegation clause, and in that case, every player wanted to stay, that kind of stuff. But then another club I remember was Newcastle. I think when they went down, they had, like, if you remember, they still had a Premier League squad because they were still paying the wages. But Tottenham, most of the contracts would have been signed with Daniel Levy there, and he's a very shrewd businessman. I'm pretty certain he'd have relegation clauses in their contracts to say it's going to be less money. So I think, yes, some players want to leave, of course. Players went there this season, thinking about Champions League football, and they're now looking at Championship football. So I think some players will want to leave, absolutely. Some players will maybe be on a good contract, even with it being cut into, reduced by whatever amount. Some players will think, no, I want to stay here and rebuild with the club. So I think it's more a conversation where obviously the club sit down, they look at what they want to do, and then the players also obviously have their input. But honestly, I don't even think about it because I really don't want that for the club.
We got to think about it. This is reality, though. With 2 points from the drop, it could be 5 this weekend. I mean, yeah. I don't want to be a doomsday merchant, but it feels like when you're looking at the whole situation and the form that Spurs are on, the form that everyone around us is on, it feels like it's only going one way. It does.
I know. I'm hoping that Nottingham Forest go down. That's what I'm hoping, because I think West Ham are in great ever since they played us.
Yeah, Maresca deserves it anyway.
Yeah. I just think as soon as they played West Ham played us, they've been flying since then. They pulled out some really good results. Leeds obviously pulled out an unbelievable result at Old Trafford this week. So I'm looking at it going, Forest is the team to catch, in my opinion. So I'm still hopeful. I'm still very hopeful, actually, and quite positive that Spurs will turn it around. But it's easier said than done, right? It needs to start with a result, and it needs to be this weekend, because when you get that result, the pressure goes back on the other team. You see the way you're thinking now. I've been in this situation myself on a couple of occasions. It's like, no matter what the player's saying, it's like we just focus on ourselves. We're not looking at the other teams. Everybody's looking at the other teams. Yeah. Of course they are. Do you think in North London they're not looking at what Man City, Chelsea on the weekend? Of course they are. I mean, everyone's sitting there watching it going, it's just a standard thing we say in interviews. But let's hope that after this weekend that the other teams are starting to feel the pressure.
I'll tell you what, I was watching that Leeds Man United game on the couch. I wanted the ground to swallow me up watching that game. I couldn't believe it because, I was going into that game, maybe Leeds are the ones that we can catch because they're actually on the worst form out of the three. And then they go win at Old Trafford playing the football that they do. It's just like whatever can go wrong is going wrong right now. Yeah, so we just got to hope for a bit of luck.
I thought the same thing. Honestly, I thought like Leeds could be the one. They've been out of the relegation zone. They've kind of been out of the conversation to a certain extent. Like people, they sort of mention them, but they're just and then it's like, I thought maybe, and then no, that looks like they're gonna be okay. So Nottingham Forest for me are the ones that, they've only had the one win under Pereira, which again happened to come against us, but it's one win. So so we win on the weekend against Brighton, things start to turn around.
For you, we've got 6 games left. How many wins do we need to beat the drop? What's your prediction?
I would say 3 wins.
We need
3 wins. Yeah, I'd say 3 wins.
We haven't won a game in
4 months.
2026. No, in 14 games without a win. 2 wins in our last 23 games, and we need 3 in our next 6.
I know.
When you put it like that, all of a sudden it seems nearly impossible.
I know. I was actually having the same conversation earlier today, and it's a really valid point. But what I would say is they're now working under a new manager. So and often you see a new manager bounce. It's often what you see. I think that's what Spurs.
Not Tottenham.
Not Tottenham. I mean, of late that hasn't seemed to be the case. But I think that I said, putting Sunderland aside as a tough away game, I still believe that this new manager bounce with De Zerbi is there. And look, he's no fool either, right? He wouldn't have taken the job if he didn't believe that it was possible to stay in the Premier League. I'm sure of that. I know he's got a long-term contract. I know there was talk about him still staying even in the Championship. All of that you've seen in the media. But I think again, he doesn't want that on his CV. He clearly believes that the club can stay up and will stay up in the Premier League.
Do you think that was the right move to sack Tudor when we did and bring in De Zerbi, with such little time left?
Yeah, I feel it was the right move to sack Igor. I felt that it just didn't go well with him at the club. It was kind of a strange appointment from the outside anyway. Looking in, it felt a strange appointment. Obviously, with no Premier League experience, it just didn't go well. Terrible timing with the fact that he sadly lost his father as well. So I think that kind of probably delayed it another week or so. But tragic. That's the life of a football manager, isn't it? It's like you've got all the stuff going on at work, and then it's your family life as well.
Yeah.
It's like, obviously, that side of it. But I was pushing for Ryan Mason, a former teammate of mine, still a good friend of mine, and that's who I felt would be a good fit. But as I said earlier, De Zerbi's a top coach, and I just hope that he can work his magic in a short space of time. Was
he open to it, Ryan?
I'm sure he would have been. I'm sure he would have been. Yeah, I'm sure if the call came, then I'm sure he would have been. He's Spurs through and through. He's been in the club for so long, and obviously got a good connection there. So I'm sure he would have been open to it. But De Zerbi's the man. So let's see. We could talk about Redder, we could talk about Ryan Mason, but I think we just need to get behind De Zerbi now. And as I said, start this weekend with a real. I want to see that. I want to see a 1-0 grinded out result, backs against the wall, everyone hugging each other at the end of the game. Full stadium. I think that'll be a really good sign for me that things are turning around.
Yeah. What's your gut telling you? Are we going to stay up? What's your instinct?
My instinct says yes.
Yes.
Okay. What does yours say?
I don't want to.
I mean, for me, I've been saying there's no evidence right now to suggest we're staying up, but I just can't envisage us getting relegated, and I can't envisage us playing Championship football next. I just can't do it. Everyone's calling me deluded. I'm calling myself deluded, but I'd rather stay deluded. Yesterday, I had kind of cracked after the Leeds result, but we just have to stay up by hook or by crook.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how. Just do it.
Yeah. I think this weekend is the one. This weekend,
we say that every weekend, though.
No, but I really make or break. That's my feeling with it. I genuinely feel like this weekend is make or break. I don't want to think about what it would look like if we lose this weekend, because then I think I'd be, when asked on the radio, I'd probably be giving a different opinion. But I think if and when we win this weekend, I think then it'd be okay. Momentum's changing. And then you look at the fixtures and you go, okay, because I don't look at those fixtures and think that they can't win any again. I look at all of them and go, you can win all of them, you can win all 6, but just not the way the team is playing, because I say it looks like a team low on confidence, individually and collectively.
We just need something to go for us to use as a catalyst. I think that's the main thing. If we can get that against Brighton, if we win against Brighton this weekend, I think we'll stay up.
Same.
Yeah. All right, Steven, been massive pleasure to have you on the channel today. Do you want to tell people about your YouTube channel that Sim was a guest on a few weeks ago?
Yeah, we had a really good conversation actually about a very similar topic around Spurs and management and whether Thomas Frank's going to be there or not be there. And, it's it wasn't that long ago, but now we're on to the third manager. So, left field productions, we're just bringing sort of left field views and opinions around football, having weekly debates. We've got Rob Watton from Sky Sports on there. He's often on the show presenting with me. We just have these kind of conversations and discussing topics from all the way from academy football to sort of discussing game changes, substitutions, all of that. So I bring the football experience, and Rob brings his experience of presenting. So if any of you want to give it a watch, then Left Field Productions is the name of the show. Lovely. We'll put a link pinned to the title of the video. But Steven, thank you so much for coming on. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you again before the end of the season, and let's hope we can get a result this weekend. My pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me. Fingers crossed for this weekend. Cheers, Steven. Cheers, Steven. See you guys. Being a bit of a positive vibe, Steven Caulker, to the show. Guys, from his years in the game, years playing, he watches Spurs and his gut is telling him we're staying up. That's enough for me. Yeah, that spoke really well. He made me believe again.
Let's get deluded all over again.
He wasn't so on board with Harry Redknapp though.
No, he was not.
Everyone was like, he's like, I had him as manager, and I don't think so.
But he seems on board with De Zerbi though. That's the main thing.
That's the main thing, exactly. All right. So yeah, that was great. Cool.
I love it. He's saying he wants to bring on views from left field, and first person he called up was him.
He knows I think outside the box. I'm a different kind of thinker. As one commenter very rightly put it, he said, "In the end, Sim's always right."
In the end, Sim always wins.
Sim always wins.
Sim's the Marinakis of We Are Tottenham TV.
In the end, I always win. Always win.
All right, look, we are going to be looking into this article, analysing how bad the analytics were. I haven't read the whole article. I've just seen snippets of it. So let's get into it and see what we can take from it.
The article is titled, "How Bad Analytics Built a Tottenham Team That Might Get Relegated." And a lot of people have been talking about this article. Essentially, what it posits is Tottenham have been using the data wrong, or using bad data to come to the wrong conclusion. What it's led to is Spurs having a very imbalanced squad. Some of the kind of snippets you've taken from this article are the fact that they go into how data is used to analyse football, and how basically, by and large, a lot of people, overlook or like the common fan when they talk about like expected goals. And I think it's common knowledge. It's not the best team. The best team doesn't always win in football. I think everyone who watches football, who's seen football over a long stretch of time, knows that the best team doesn't always win. It's always the team who creates the better chances, who are usually more likely to win. And over a large stretch of time, it kind of bears out in the data, where everyone's kind of XG is always quite similar. There are obviously outliers, but over a long stretch of time, the expected goals does generally line up to how many goals you do score and do concede. He actually brought an example of over since 2010 they did an analysis.
Can we bring this up on the screen?
Yeah, I sent him the article. If you can open it up. This is quite interesting. He did an analysis of every Premier League team. So scroll down to there's a graph. He did an analysis of every Premier League team since 2010, and on the left is how many teams are in the certain categories, and on the bottom it's their goal difference minus the expected goal difference. And as you can see, most teams are in that centre, which is basically plus or minus like 5 goals compared to your goal difference XG. There's only one team since 2010 who have had basically a plus 30 of their goal difference compared to their XG.
Does it say who that was, or it doesn't say?
It does.
Oh, is it Tottenham?
It was Tottenham. It was Tottenham back in 16-17.
That's Son Heung-min.
And Kane.
Yeah.
So I think, well, first of all, that shows. I find that quite interesting, because all that shows is we massively overperformed that season. Like, as much as we were a very good team.
17.
That's the season we got 86 points.
Yeah, that was the Chelsea. Yeah.
Yeah, last season at the Lane.
Yeah.
What the data shows there is we actually massively we overperformed more than any other team since 2010.
If you look at a lot of goals, you can reel them off your head. Like, a lot of goals that we scored were outside the box. With Dele Alli, Christian Eriksen, Sonny, Kane.
Okay, yeah, for sure. So, what's interesting about that is we overperformed, but because we overperformed, maybe we gave ourselves false expectations of how good we were. And obviously we ended up declining over those next few years, didn't we? But I think the point being is, the point the article was making with that bar is...
So how many over were we?
30.
Wow.
Yeah, we massively overperformed. We were a plus 30 on our goal difference compared to our expected goal difference was.
When did XG records begin?
I think they officially began being in 2016, about then actually. But I think they can there are people who've retroactively gone and analysed games and added XG to them and stuff like that.
So when's this? This is since 2010.
This is since 2010. Yeah. The point this graph was making is, when you look, there's one team who's right down on the left, and it's minus 30. There's only one team that's minus 30. You think, who could that be? And a lot of people thinking, oh, is that Tottenham? This season. But actually, it's not. It's Sheffield United from a couple of years ago. The point being is...
when they finished bottom?
Yeah. The point, saying they underperformed their XG by 30.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is not.
Who do they have up front?
No, it's not just about scoring. It's also conceding as well. So they probably conceded more than they should have, and they scored. It's a goal difference of 30.
Fine.
It's a goal difference of 30 from the XG. The point being is Tottenham this season are actually roughly where we expect them to be. We're actually in that about the bar near the middle because our XG difference is minus 11. Sorry, our goal difference is minus 11 and our XG difference is minus 15. So we're actually overperforming where we should be. We're actually better. We're actually doing better than what our data suggests. So the point is that this is not a fluke where we are. It's not unlucky. Last season, if you look at the difference, I think we massively underperformed and our data was a lot better than where we should have been. It wasn't like amazing, but it was like mid-table rather than 17th. Whereas now, we are literally, the data is telling us we are a relegation team. Yeah. That is what the data is telling us, and that's what we are. So they're saying, why is that? Why are we so bad? Why? How have they come to that conclusion? And they said, it says Tottenham's major issue, if you scroll down, it says Tottenham's major issue is they can't pass. Usually, football is a complex, dynamic game where individual qualities are impossible to extract from independencies of roster construction, managerial instructions, and on-field interactions. Basically saying it's very difficult to judge a player just on their data when you don't take the wider context into account. But sometimes you get a team like Tottenham where the diagnosis is pretty simple. These guys can't pass. You're telling
me Danny Kiriaku's right.
He's saying that they've come up with this metric for passing, and basically how it works is, for example, he says how the metric works is, for example, let's consider a centre back passes the ball on the halfway line, a routine a pass under no pressure to an open teammate which doesn't move the ball up the pitch. That would give you a score of 0 for that pass, because it's just like it's a pass that doesn't really help. It's just under no pressure. You pass it to a teammate, doesn't really. But if you do like a line breaking pass that gets you up the pitch, or a pass under pressure that finds a teammate, you get a positive mark for that. So they've done a whole analysis over the Premier League for these passing metrics, and what they found is Tottenham's top 5 passers in their team are and where they rank in the league. Romero is our number 1, and he's 19th in the league. Yeah. Van der Ven is our second best passer, and he's 87th in the league. Destiny Udogie is our third best at 152nd in the league. Danso is our 4th best at 167th.
How is Danso our 4th best passer?
Our 167th as well.
Yeah, but like Danso's not a good passer.
No, and Kudus is our 5th best at 186th. So what that tells you is, first of all, we have 2 players in the whole division in the top 150 best passers in the league when it comes to actual passes that affect the game and actually move the ball forward. Also, what tells you is in our top 5, we don't have any midfielders.
Yeah, but also
midfielders.
This is very much, you've got to caveat the tactics that we were playing and the instruction from
absolutely
Thomas Frank all season. So
absolutely,
it's not directly based on the quality of the player.
No, yeah, you're right, but the reality is, though these are the facts. This is what we are not passing the ball, like anywhere near, which we know it was very different under Ange than it was under Frank.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And
I don't know what the scores would have been under Ange.
The tactics under Thomas Frank, we were pretty much not using the midfield to pass. Really, we were just getting it out wide and going down the flanks.
He says the conclusion he makes is passing is the fundamental skill in the sport. The average Premier League team attempts 450 passes per game. Nothing else comes close. In a single game, the average team attempts 8 shots, crosses the ball 18 times, and tries dribbles about 18 times, attempts 16 tackles, and makes 8 interceptions. If you can't pass the ball, then nothing else matters. It's the force at the heart of the game that gives everything else meaning. So how has Tottenham, one of the richest club, got into this position where they only have 2 players in the top 150 passes in the league. And there he says it's basically we've been using data wrong. We've been using data to come to the wrong conclusions.
It's interesting that as well, before you go on, because, you know, Spurs made a whole song and dance, didn't it, about Spurs are going to go into the data-led approach now when we're coming into the new era, when a lot of clubs have been doing it prior. And everyone's like, all right, great, should have done it a long time ago, but it's great that we're going down a more modern route and everything like that. But nobody actually spoke about, you know, how this data is going to be sourced, who's providing the data, what data we actually using, who's the guys looking at the data to actually implement it well enough. You know, there's so much more to go into it than just like a data-led approach, you know what I mean?
Data helps you find what you want, but you've got to know what you want.
Exactly.
And it seems as though we don't. He says...
Apparently my mic is off.
Was it? Oh. He says, how to explain what has happened with Tottenham. Tottenham have a roster filled with explosive athletes who can run using their physical metrics gradient created an athleticism score that's a combo of endurance, explosiveness, speed that adjusts for position and size. So they've created this score that measures physical traits. And Tottenham have 7 players who perform at a 90 or above in their squad, and that's Odegaard, Bergvall, Gray, Solanke, and Conor Gallagher. Sorry, they have 7 in their squad. 5 of them, Odegaard, Bergvall, Gray, Solanke, and Gallagher, were signed after Johan Lang came the club's technical director in October 2023. The first 4 were the 4 outfield players signed during Lang's first summer in charge. You can't build a roster that can't pass unless you're systemically focused on a set of alternative player attributes that create an institutional blind spot. Given that Romero and Maddison were signed in 21, and Maddison, who's been injured all season, was signed in 23, the ignorance of what actually ignorance of what actually matters becomes even more stark. So he's suggesting that ever since Lang has come in, we have players who perform really well in data, but it's like physical data that they're performing well in, and they've completely ignored players who actually perform the very fundamental task of what we need, is that players passing the ball effectively. And our 2 best passers were signed before Lang came in. Since Lang has come in, clearly we focused on this players who perform very well with these physical traits. That's what he's like been brought in. That's what he's got. And yet this team are left with 2 players in the top 150 who can pass the ball. And he's also positing that we use data to retroactively justify the decisions we make, rather than using data to then sign players. We don't make decisions based on data. We use data to justify the decisions that we make.
It's just ridiculous. The whole thing is just ridiculous. Like, how can you not be looking at every single metric of the data and just be looking at one aspect to sign players? And then how can you not even be using the data to sign the players? You just use it after to say, oh, you know, look, this guy's a good player. You know, I back my decision. You know, the whole thing's ridiculous.
And we've been saying that I think everyone's been saying for a few years we need passes in that middle. I think a lot of Tottenham fans have been saying that. And we know we've been given Paulinho and Gallagher and, you know, these are maybe the main signings, haven't they, in the last few years? Especially, it was very clear under Ange we needed more passing ability because that's what the system demanded. Like a lot better ability to control games and a lot better actually the passing. And yet it's just not something we've been focusing on, and we've been getting more and more physicality, yet we've been maybe demanding them to play certain passes, especially when Ange and now De Zerbi's here. We've been asking them to play more of a passing game, and yet we haven't been focusing on our recruitment on getting that passing ability through the door. And we've been
we played a passing game under Ange.
That's what I'm saying, but we haven't been focused on getting passes into the team through recruitment. We've been focusing on physical. And he's saying under Johan Lang, we've signed all these players who perform in the top 90th whatever metric for physicality, yet we're not focused on whether they pass well. And I think that you can see at the moment, we look at a team and they can't string 2 passes together. Now, why is that? And I'm not necessarily saying it's because they're the worst passers in the world, but when they're not focused, we're not focused on, the data clearly isn't focused on bringing in the best passers. And that's part of the problem. You have to marry up the physicality with someone who has a bit more technical ability in their passing game.
Yeah, look, that our players are not the best in terms of that aspect, but it makes a whole lot worse with the tactics and the coaching that was put into the team this season. Our players looked a lot better at passing through the middle than they did last season, than they did through this season. They looked a lot better at 2 years ago. They look at it this season. For me, a big part of it is coaching. And these players, you know, we're talking about their lack of ability to play a 5-yard pass and to consistently progress the ball forward. For me, yes, we need better. Yes, we need better profiles in there. And yes, the data can help us to source those players. But they're nowhere near as bad as what they've been showing this season. For me, this season has mainly been a coaching error.
Yeah, but even what we saw under Ange last season, right, when certain players weren't available, we really suffered for it, especially, you know, Romero and Van de Ven, two of our best, well, clearly, apparently, two of our best passers. Like, we have needed...
So what you're saying is, so you're saying, according to this article, Danny's right. Danny's been saying these players can't pass. And we've been arguing it all season.
He might have a point, according to this. He might have a point that they really lack the fundamental passing quality, and that I think they've clearly been underperforming even what they've been playing, but I think we've needed more passing ability, and it clearly hasn't been one of the, in terms of recruitment, it hasn't been one of the priorities, and it should be. It should be the priority
Regardless of it, wasn't even a priority in our setup this season. So I think it's really hard to...
No, but his point is, when we had Ange, and Ange's first summer, we signed Odobert, Bergval, Gray, Solanke, and Gallagher. Not Gallagher, and Solanke.
Lange's first summer.
Lange's first summer, Ange's second.
Ange. Yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
And he said the metric they perform best at is these physical ones.
I feel like Gray's a good passer, though.
That's not his strength. I don't think that's his best strength.
I think he's a good passer, though. It might not be his strength, but I think he's a good passer. Do you not think he's a good passer?
Did we sign him because he performs really well with his passing, or did we sign him because he's really good at driving the ball and he's really good at receiving the ball under pressure?
I think we signed him because he's a young player with that will have a potentially high sell-on value.
Well, I don't think we signed him for his passing. I'm not saying he's a bad passer. I don't think he's a particularly great passer, to be honest. I haven't seen anything. I'm not saying he's bad, but I've seen him do some nice switches of play and stuff like that. But I've seen some other younger players who are probably, you know, someone like, I know Wharton's maybe a bit older, but like Wharton, he's not a Wharton, is he? He's not like an elite level part, or that's not one of his core strengths, is his passing. Yeah, I could probably name 3 strengths probably more than his passing ability. He wasn't signed. If we were looking for passes, you won't sign Gray, is my point. He's not the guy who's your priority. Bergval, definitely a lot better at physically driving the ball. Physically he's brilliant. I remember when we first signed him, those training videos came out and he was doing some crazy things physically, but his passing ability has never been his biggest strength. Solanke, he's not like an amazing passer, as much as he's decent at holding the ball up. Again, physically, that's his main strength. And that's not what we needed at that point. We needed a lot more technical ability, especially after Ange's first season. We knew where we were lacking a bit, and we needed much different things. And yet the data, we went in a different direction with the data, it seemed, is the point.
Every season, we've always ended the season crying out for a ball-playing midfielder, a deep-line playmaker. Every year. We've never got it. And went as far to say we signed João Palhinha this summer.
Yeah.
And we can always say, you know, João Palhinha is a good player in his own right, but he wasn't the specific player that we needed. He's exactly an example of what you're saying here.
Exactly. So I think there's a big problem, or I think we know it, we just haven't seen it but borne out in real examples there of how wrong the recruitment is at this club. And
it's a good point someone says here, by the way. The last time we signed passers was actually in Ange's first summer.
Exactly, where Lange wasn't there.
Lange wasn't there with James Maddison.
That's what he's saying. That's what the guy is saying. We were getting better players when Lang wasn't there, but since he's come in, his focus is different.
Get this guy out. What is this? What? He is so bad at his job. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he has made such
so incompetent.
Yeah, he really is.
He can't. He shouldn't be able to survive this. He just
can't. He can't. He really can't. Like, seriously, he is the person the most that is ruining Spurs right now, in my opinion. He should be the number one guy to get out of this football club.
The fact that our best passer is a centre-back is a damning indictment on him.
Yeah.
Damning indictment. And the fact that we only have 2 in the top 150 and they're both our centre-backs and we have no midfielders who are among our best passers, when our midfielders should be the ones making... I know centre-backs in ball-heavy teams do touch the ball a lot and pass the ball a lot, but the midfielders should be up there with some of the most passes in the team and the ones who affect the game most through passing, and yet none of our midfielders are among our top passers. None of them. And if all the criticism of Romero, I think Romero's doing so much. I think I know they criticise him. I understand he's not had the best season, but you've got to realise, like, he's our best passer. He's like our biggest threat in the box. He's probably our most creative player, and he has to defend to the best of his ability as well. He's basically doing everything, and it's no surprise that things slip quite often with the way our team is set up when it comes to that. Like, we put way too much on him, to be honest. And I think the fact that he's like so far and away our best passer is ridiculous. It's a joke with the situation. No wonder he gets frustrated and he goes up front by himself, because no one else can get the ball. He has to basically pass the ball forward and then run up because no one else can progress the ball. It's ridiculous. In a functioning world, he pops the ball off to Wharton and he can allow the team to find their way up the pitch themselves. But he's got to do it and he's got to get up the pitch himself. The whole thing is nuts. Yeah. The whole thing is crazy. Like, the squad building is just something I've never seen before in this. And to hear, look at this article and how they've gone about the recruitment. We've all known there's a problem, but now people are realizing it. Journalists are realizing it, and you can see for yourself how bad the recruitment and what they're focusing on is right now. It's nuts. Yeah. Lang has to be. If
he's not gone this summer, then I don't know what to tell you, because all Stell's going on about is getting relegated is going to force them to change, but nothing's going to change if he stays at the club. Mm-hmm. How is if we go down to the Championship and we keep Lang at the club, then we could keep sinking even further. Genuinely, he is the biggest hurdle Spurs have right now. This recruitment is nothing short of embarrassing. You're talking about a multi-billion-pound industry with the best infrastructure in the Premier League when you're looking at the stadium, the training facilities, the money available. And this is the data model he comes up with? It's ridiculous.
No, you had a manager like Ange, you know exactly how he plays. It's very clear. There's nothing ambiguous about it. He plays that way. That's the way he wants to try and play football. The fact that you don't focus on the most fundamental thing you need to play that way of football in the recruitment is insanity. Yeah. Pure insanity and the highest form of incompetence you can ever think about. The number one thing you should be looking for is ability to pass a ball. That should be like your number one focus. Then after, okay, does he pass? Yes. And then after you look at, okay, what's his physical, blah, blah, blah. But the number one thing should be passing. And if he doesn't have that, he shouldn't be considered in the recruitment. The whole thing is crazy. Obviously, you passing, and then how much can he run, all that kind of stuff. That also has to be considered, don't get me wrong.
Everything has to be considered.
I'm not saying, obviously it does, but it should be, does he, to qualify to join this team, it should be how good can you pass? And then everything else leads on from that. If you don't clear that hurdle, you shouldn't be considered in the team, in the recruitment. Yep. It's nuts. It's not. It seems as though the number one thing is how good is your physical. And
you can't build a De Zerbi team without passes either.
Absolutely.
So De Zerbi and Lange, unless Lange massively changes his ways, which he's not going to, because he's a failure at Aston Villa, he's been a failure at Tottenham. So on what merit did he even get this job anyway? It's just like De Zerbi, we need to get in this supporting director that can work with De Zerbi.
And you look at all the top teams, and you look at their midfield signings over the last few years, and all of them have very good passing abilities. Mm. They all have a good ability to control games with their ability to pass.
Yep.
And you look at our signings, and it's like passing hasn't been even considered. It's like a secondary thought.
Yeah,
it's nuts. Gallagher,
and at the
Paulinho.
same time, Vinay and Daniel Levy are saying we need to win the Premier League and the Champions League,
Patting
and
themselves on the back.
and they can't even sign a player that can pass.
It's insane. It's insane. But that, yeah, look, it's an interesting article. It's on ESPN if you want to read it. And I think it just lays out how bad and how incompetent our recruitment strategy has been.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just another thing to get angry about today. But we'll be back tomorrow, people. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Massive big up to Steven Caulker for coming on today. And we shall see you very, very soon. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, come on, you Spurs.